So what happens if you get a spiked shield, couple it with a shield crash Ash of War and slap some frost build-up on it? Well, you pretty much get one of the most unconventional broken builds in Elden Ring that deals insane frostbite damage, blood build-up, and all sorts of other unspeakable things to your enemies. So let's begin with this really awesome build. Of course, also a huge shout out to a lot of you guys that have pointed me towards this really awesome shield in some of the previous videos. It's been a while, so I kind of forgot the names and I can't really find the comments. So yeah, if you are one of those people, just leave a comment and I'm gonna upvote you anyway. But this all begins with the spiked palisade shield. Of course, this is a really awesome spiking looking innocent kind of weapon that you might be tempted to put off, but it comes with some really great bonuses. By default, it comes with 70 points into bleed build up, so that's actually quite great even if you don't spec into arcane. If you couple this with the shield crash, you can turn it into one of the best weapons in Elden Ring, but I would suggest putting it with a frost affinity instead of anything else. The result is pretty incredible. Not only do you get to deal a lot of damage at the end of the attack, you also kind of do this pushback that throws enemies back, even some of the more oversized ones, but most important, you get a full guard during the entire animation, so whatever attacks you from the front will get guard blocked during that process. It's so incredible actually that even attacks that you would normally be inclined to dodge, like for example getting impaled by some oversized spear or some huge enemy trying to step on you, yeah, you can still fully guard through that, get the minimum amount of damage and still deal all of the damage from your bleed and frostbite. So with that out of the way, let's talk about these items and how you can find them. Starting with the spiked palisade shield, you get this from the deep sea of Rawell. You need to make your way over there through Mistwood, and then starting from the riverbank side of Grace, just make your way up north until you reach the below the well side of Grace. There's going to be an elevator in this area that you will need to unlock using some of these stone keys, and this will bring you all the way up in some canyon area in Caelid. Once you reach here, just make your way towards the later parts of the canyon where there's going to be one of these like sentinel enemies shooting arrows at you, and you will either want to defeat it or just look below it because there's a corpse that actually holds the palisade shield. But yeah, if you defeat the enemy, it also drops a Golem Great Bow, which is quite awesome. For the Ash of War, simply head over to the Lux Ruins right here, very close to the Altus Plateau side of Grace. It's going to be located inside of this kind of like tower slash structure, and you have to defeat it before it disappears to get the Ash of War. Now, in terms of some of the other items, I'm using the Crucible X Armor set simply because it gives me some nice poise without having too much into weight, so you don't have to spend too many points into endurance. This can be a pretty heavy build if you're not being too careful, so maybe pay attention to that. For the talismans, the most important is probably going to be this really awesome Great Shield Talisman that boosts guarding ability by quite a lot. It's probably not gonna bring it to 100 despite the fact that the shield comes with 59 once you fully upgrade this, but it's going to be pretty close to that, so this means you minimize the damage as much as possible, and that's actually quite nice, especially against some of these harder hitting enemies that will definitely overwhelm you, so you will want that guard boost right away. The Rotten Winged Sword insignia, surprisingly enough, it does work with the shield, providing some nice attack power bonus on successive attacks. Since you're doing that all the time, you basically do a charge up, it's going to deal constant damage, about 3 to 5 hits, so this means you are getting a bunch of stacks for some additional nice damage. Alexander's Shard definitely works with this. I've did a bunch of tests, and yes, it brings me about 200 to 300 points of extra damage at my level with this current build distribution, so it's actually quite welcomed. And obviously a Source Seal to reach that 80 points into strength right away. Speaking of points and attributes, yes, you're gonna aim those 80 points into strength. This is going to buff the damage on that shield quite significantly. I did test between, yeah, strength and arcane, between 80 strength and 80 arcane, and every single time strength came on top, simply because frostbite does not correlate with arcane at all, and those 65 points into that bleed build-up is plenty enough to proc it in at most 2 attacks with the shield. Also, don't forget about endurance. I've put 35 since that was perfectly enough for me with this setup and having a great lance in my other hand, and about 40 points into vigor since you're gonna be close to the enemy, so you'll want to tank. And if you want some other alternatives, for the Talisman, the Dragon Crest Great Shield is also good. It provides a 20% damage reduction, which can definitely be stacked and used instead of the Rotten Sword insignia. You can also go with an Earth Tree +2 favor for more HP, mana, and equip load in case you're going with a more heavy set or a more heavy weapon, but you can like just combine it however you want. I've even made use of the Swaddling Cloth for some successive attack restore HP. It's quite useful, but you have to know that only one of the attacks will restore HP, not all of the attacks from the charge with the shield, unfortunately. Now, in terms of fighting strategies, here is what I recommend. Obviously, this is still a great shield. It's great at blocking, so you can totally just use riposte, just block with L1 and then press R2 following an attack to come up with a counter attack, deal more damage, and have fun like that. Totally viable with something like a great lance, deals nice damage, has a lot of range, and can stop enemies in their feet without having too much requirements for this entire build. Now, if you want to like go in and be more stylish, you can also just use the shield and try to group up enemies in a line or get them very close together to one another so that you can hit multiple with the shield attack. If you do so, you can throw multiple enemies on their backs, even interrupt some others in the background in case you reach with the final attack, and it's totally worth it since it looks quite awesome. Luckily, you don't have to worry too much about attacks coming from the front since you can just tank them, ignore them, and you will deal that damage all the way through. At the same time, if you fight against enemies that might be charging up some attacks, don't stop or dodge, just charge up your own attack, and even if you're a bit further away, you will still hit maybe the last part of that charge and still interrupt them and throw them on their backs, so it's totally worth it. For some of the bosses in the game and more devastating attacks, again, even against these you don't have to worry too much unless they bypass the shield somehow, maybe from the sides, back, or from above, but as long as they come from the front, you can fully ignore them. You will not get stunned like 99% of the time, and you can still perform that really high damage against bosses. I've tested this against some of the tougher challenges, even enemies that would step on you like one of the rotten dragons, and even that was not enough to stop me during the charge up animations, so I'm pretty sure that this gives you a massive boost to your resistances during that animation, or at least in terms of poise. I'm not really sure exactly. For some of the more agile type of enemies, what you want to do is to meet them head on, so maybe try to anticipate some of their attacks. If there's anything that's charging towards you or you will expect an attack following up soon, you can preemptively charge up the shield and make your way towards them, and usually you will meet them dead on and they will definitely come up way more roughed up on the other side than you ever will. The only thing you have to worry about is obviously enemies that jump around or do slash attacks that might hit you from the back or from the sides where you aren't protected by the shield, but usually you can just dodge away or reposition yourself or maybe get a potion to heal, and that should suffice. In any case, this is the build. Totally let me know down below in the comments what you think about it, and of course, as always, if you enjoyed these videos in general, a like would be super appreciated, and also subscribing to the channel would help me a lot. We're trying to reach 400k subs by the end of 2022. I think it's possible, but not without your help, and besides, I would be super grateful to you if you did that. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.